Hey, what's up? It's Mr. Dean, and it has been a hot minute since I've broken down a Mario Kart track and why I like it so much, so I thought why not go ahead and bring the series back. And so far, without fail, every video I have made has been on a Mario Kart Wii track, so why not go ahead and keep that trend going today. Being that we are in that snowy and jolly time of year, I wanted to cover the closest thing we have to a good Mario Kart Wii Christmas track in my opinion, so let's go ahead and talk about what makes DK Summit so good. So to kick this off, let's hear once again from Charlie's Café about some of what makes DK Summit good from a visual design standpoint.
DK Summit is visually one of my favorite tracks in Mario Kart Wii, and it uses some pretty cool visual tricks as well. These bleachers look pretty detailed from a distance, but up close you can see that they're actually just a flat image, and the crowd that sits in them is just a sequence of 3 cycling images. I also find it interesting just how many unique signs that this track has, and perhaps the most interesting detail are the several distant snowy volcanoes. I hadn't really considered it before, but these surrounding volcanoes make me wonder if DK Summit itself is a volcano. Well, there's my analysis. Back to you, Mr. Dean.
Alright, so the visual design is great and all, but at the end of the day, a Mario Kart track has to be, fun to race on and everything. So let's go ahead and break down the way this track operates from the beginning to the end of a race. So right off the bat, this track is somewhat similar in concept to another track in this game, that being GCN DK Mountain. Both tracks kick off with a few item boxes and a cannon which takes you to the top of a mountain that you spend the race going down. Once you do reach the summit of the mountain itself, a long left turn comes up, which to me has always been really fun to navigate properly using the half-pipe ramps in order to cut around the turn. However, when doing this in an actual race, you do run the risk of running into a well-placed item as potentially people can trap this area. Then we approach a small split between a large boost ramp and small snow ramps. Generally speaking in Mario Kart Wii, you want to avoid being in the air as you lose time being in the air, however you do get to decide whether it is worth getting an item box here. Otherwise, you can do small tricks on the snow bumps, which is very satisfying to do. You can also do a smaller trick on these to reduce airtime even further, or just drive on the flat ground next to it. Then if you get a mushroom, star, thundercloud, or some other off-road inhibiting item, you can do a little shortcut through this thick snow. For newer players, this heavy snow also serves as another incentive to take the large ramp from before as it makes the turn less awkward. This then leads into probably the most interesting portion of the entire track. So we got a series of bumps that you can trick on alongside 3 different boost ramps. However, the reason this section of the track is so interesting is because of what directly follows. Right after comes 2 incredibly sharp turns around chasms that falling into causes you to lose a lot of time. However, these chasms also create opportunity for some shortcuts. For example, you can do a drift and cut over one of the chasms to chop off a sliver of time. This is a pretty easy shortcut to do, but it can potentially lead to a target shock and an awkward turn right after. Alternatively, you can cut over both chasms with a double shortcut. Essentially, by slowing down, approaching the first chasm and clearing it, you can then drift towards the other gap and clear that one too. This is another potential target shock spot and is much more difficult than the single, however, of course the potential reward of doing it successfully is right there in front of you. Instead of doing these shortcuts, you can also take the safe boring route of just going around the slicey road. It is definitely safer and offers item boxes on the half-pipe ramps, but generally I always find myself at least going for the single. As soon as you get used to the awkward turn right after the single, I pretty much always go for that. Finally comes the straightaway with half-pipe ramps on each side. Now in order to keep this from getting monotonous and boring, there are 2 big things the racer has to keep in mind. One is the deep snow which lines various sections of the road and which going in will just completely f you over. You can avoid this though via either an item, driving around it, or the most optimal method of riding a half-pipe, specifically on the right side. However, you also have to factor in the toads snowboarding throughout the half-pipe since running into them will spin you out. This is not the only track in the game to do this kind of thing though. Coconut Mall has a straightaway with cars that don't know how to park and should probably have their licenses revoked. This straightaway in DK Summit is in my humble opinion one of the harder ones in the game, which I like. Very much like Coconut Mall's parked cars, you have to actually be paying attention each lap to where exactly the snowboarders are at. So yeah, overall I think DK Summit gets a lot right when it comes to what makes a good Mario Kart track. It brings back the thrill of downhill racing that we saw on a track like GC and DK Mountain, funnily enough also being in this game, however bringing it over in a brand new setting. I think the half-pipe mechanic of Mario Kart Wii adds an extra layer of nuance to the gameplay, and the more more difficult double cut adds that extra skill decision making to the race. This is also a well-designed track for casual players, certainly being difficult but not to the frustrating extent that may be found on tracks like Bowser's Castle or Rainbow Road. That all is what I believe makes DK Summit so good. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, peace out.